2021 has been filled with strange and scary mysteries. From unsolved disappearances and other crimes to natural phenomena we've yet to find an explanation for. Number 5. Residents in a small northwestern city in Spain were horrified when hundreds of birds suddenly fell from the sky outside of a hospital for a mysterious reason. More than 200 starling birds plummeted to the earth, where residents say they fell like rain. The incident resembled something from an apocalypse film, as the birds hit pedestrians and cars. According to those that saw the incident, some of the birds flew from trees into the hospital garden, flew a few meters, and then fell to the ground. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but after the shock of the incident wore off, the mystery remained. The bodies of the birds were collected, and some were sent off to be tested to see if the cause of the incident could be found. The results of those tests are still a mystery, but there's been plenty of speculation about what could have caused the scary event. It wasn't the first such incident this year either. A small village in Russia feared the end of the world might be on the horizon when they would wake to hundreds of lifeless ravens on the streets. Over the course of multiple days, countless birds succumbed to something mysterious that took their lives. Strangely, other wildlife, including other birds, didn't seem to be affected. It wasn't clear if the ravens had been poisoned or if they could have been carrying some kind of disease. Then, several thousand seabirds washed up on the coast of the sea, sparking fears of a new avian flu. The Spanish incident was less dramatic and seemed to have been an isolated incident. Theories about what happened included the possibility of electrocution or toxic chemicals. In 2020, birds in nearby Tarragona were poisoned by chemicals from a petrochemical factory, causing hundreds to fall to the ground in the nearby areas. While this scary mystery does sound like something that would happen shortly before the end of the world, it's likely one that will be solved once modern science can determine whether disease, an accident, or something more sinister is to blame. Number 4. In February of 2021, a 21-year-old man who had studied at the University of Texas in Austin was reported missing. However, by this point, he had been missing for more than 40 years. It was 1976 that the family of Brian Thomas Vargo last saw him. He had been studying in Austin and had an apartment there, while the family lived in Houston. In March of that year, he started a road trip to Colorado. The state line was more than a 10-hour drive from his apartment, but he took his rundown car and made it into the state before it broke down. The car was taken to a mechanic while Brian traveled back to Houston to get the car's title from his mother. Brian's mother dropped him off at the bus station. This was the last anyone saw of him. Given the amount of time that has passed since the disappearance and it being publicized, lots of details have been missed. A period of time after Brian was last seen, the family was contacted by somebody in Austin. Brian hadn't been attending classes, and it seemed like his apartment had been abandoned. They needed to come pick up his stuff. When they arrived, they found all of his belongings, including his wallet. It wasn't clear when exactly he was last seen. The mechanic, who Brian had left his car with, also contacted the family. Brian hadn't returned to get his car, and the vehicle had actually been broken into. The mechanic wanted to get rid of the car. What happened to the car after that is one of the many questions that have been left unanswered due to the amount of time that has passed. Brian's mother wanted to report him missing, but she was dissuaded from doing so by the police. She did go to the Salvation Army's missing persons section to look for him there, but the investigation was closed sometime in the 80s. There was also some confusion as to whether he had actually been reported as a missing person. Finally, in 2021, the family officially filed a missing person report. It was only then that they learned that he had actually dropped out of university. It seems like he had spoken about doing so with his father, who had told him that he wouldn't pay for Brian to go and find himself. Brian's family believed the original purpose of his trip to Colorado may have been to go quote-unquote find himself. One of the people who lived in the same apartment complex as Brian told them that he spoke about making the trip. They theorized that when the car broke down, he just figured that he would sell it rather than paying for the repairs. But something may have happened after he left the bus station that day. There has been no activity on Brian's social security number since that day. It's a scary mystery, especially considering how long the family has gone without any answers. But hopefully now they can begin to make progress. Number 3. Despite being our closest natural satellite, there are plenty of mysteries still surrounding the moon. That's especially the case with the far side of the moon, which never faces the Earth. It wasn't until 2019 that a man-made object ever landed on the far side, with a Chinese rover that was sent to the other side of the moon. Earlier this year, the rover sent back to Earth mysterious images of something that almost looks like a house in the distance. The object has been dubbed the Mystery Hut. It looks like a cube-shaped object sat on the horizon, sticking out a considerable distance from the rest of the landscape. Scientists believe this is most likely nothing more than a large boulder, but it will take months for the rover to reach the object to get a better look. The object is located in the Von Karman crater, an impact crater in the moon's southernmost hemisphere. It was here that the rover landed in January of 2019, and it has spent its time since then traveling across the crater. The Mystery Hut is some 80 meters north of where the rover was when it first spotted the object, but it will take 2 to 3 months to travel the distance and get a closer look at it. Scientists were quick to point out that this wasn't an obelisk or something out of a science fiction film, and will most likely be easily explained by science. But between the mystery of the far side of the moon and the strange shape of the object, it has definitely captured some people's imaginations. Until we reach the object, it's impossible to say for sure that this isn't something we've never seen before. Number 2. In early September 2021, residents of Acapulco were shaken by a 7.0 magnitude earthquake that took at least one life. But as people fled to the relative safety of the street, something even more mysterious and terrifying appeared in the skies around them. Bright blue and red flashes of light could be seen, sometimes looking like they were erupting from the earth itself, other times appearing like lightning from the clouds. What caused these lights remains a scary mystery. The lights could be an example of what's called earthquake lights. Earthquake lights, or EQL, are a debated phenomenon in the geophysics community. For hundreds of years, reports of brilliant lights appearing around the time and place of seismic activity has been reported. Throughout most of history, these were believed to be folk tales. But in the past 50 years or so, science have been investigating whether or not they may be real. If they are real, what causes them? The question is still open to debate. Some believe it's due to electrical energy being released. Another possibility is that ionized oxygen particles manage to get to the Earth's surface and ignite. It could also be due to the movement of the Earth in comparison to the atmosphere. However, whether this was even what was seen in Mexico is still being debated. One of the more mundane conclusions is that the lights came from damaged transformers. The quake was large enough to cause significant damage to infrastructure, and damage to electrical lines could have been part of that. But the scale of the lights seen by shocked and terrified residents doesn't seem to line up with this kind of explanation. Given that it was raining at the time, and a storm is known to have followed the earthquake, lightning strikes are another mundane possibility. Some reported the lights flying into the sky like fireworks. though that explanation doesn't entirely line up. It may have been a mixture of 3 different things, causing a terrifying, mysterious light show in the sky above an already shocked city. Number 1. The harsh winter storm seen in Texas at the start of 2021 was the setting for one of the strangest unsolved mysteries of the year. 48-year-old James Chance disappeared from his home in Grapevine, Texas, in strange circumstances, and he hasn't been seen since. James was something of a recluse. Even before COVID hit at the start of 2020, he didn't go out much. He would often joke about not having made any friends since moving to Grapevine about 10 years earlier, and the only person who lived nearby who he really spoke to was his aunt. When the pandemic hit, he was very cautious about going out, and refused to visit nearby family. So it was months after he was last seen that anybody realized James was missing. It was April of 2021 when James's landlord contacted his parents, who lived in Phoenix. His rent hadn't been paid that month, which was strange as he had never missed a payment before. When they went into the apartment, they found a few box fans on, leftover pizza in the fridge, and dirty laundry in the hamper, but no signs of James. His parents were unable to get a hold of him, and the last time anybody had been contacted by him was his birthday in January, when he had responded to happy birthday messages. James's parents still had power of attorney after selling his house a few years earlier, and this power had not been revoked, and they made some startling discoveries. They thought he worked for a telecommunications company, and he had spoken about working from home over the past year. But it emerged that he had been let go by the company in 2017. The only income James had been receiving was from the house sale and a few cash sums that seemed to be pension plan payouts. He only had a few $1,000s in his account when he disappeared. They also discovered that between February 17th and February 19th, he had been staying at a motel in Denton. This was at the end of the severe weather in Texas, when many major roads were closed. But James had traveled there in his sports car, which obviously wasn't fit for the drive. On March 22nd, the car was towed from a welcome center on the Arkansas side of Texarkana, where it had been for about 3 weeks. As James hadn't been reported missing at this point, it wasn't until long after the car was towed that James's parents and authorities were alerted to its location. A search of the area turned up no sign of James. Inside the car, James's phone was found. It had undergone a hard reset on February 28th, the same day his vehicle was captured by license plate readers heading towards Arkansas. Everything that was discovered just led to more questions than answers. Phone records showed that he spoke to hardly anyone, but in the lead up to his disappearance, he had contacted a number of motels. That was despite his apartment building not losing power during the storm, and probably being the safest place to be. He left behind all of his belongings and had no money on him. If he had intended to disappear, there's no indication as to why, and where he is now remains an unsolved mystery. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.